Hey all, I wanted to talk about the patch notes that are coming to New World for the Halloween event. These changes are primarily affecting the PvP side of the game, but there are some changes that are affecting the PvE side. So if you are involved with the PvE sort of community, definitely stay tuned, at least for when I talk about Ankh and some of the jewelry changes and specifics. But otherwise, this is going to be a generally more PvP specific video like OPRs, wars, arenas, etc. So hopping in here, I wanted to address the kind of the elephant in the room. How did Ankh get changed? How did shirking heals get changed? Because it seems like everyone wants to know this. I would say overall, anything that was using Ankh to heal more, so like shirking heals, mana, or sorry, not mana toast, healthy toast. That's not a great H, but you get the idea. Like any perk that was utilizing like incoming base effects, like healing tomb, anything like that, effectively got nerfed. The nerf for this value is about, even though in the patch notes it goes from a 1.5, that's not a great spot to write, is it? It goes from 1.5 to 1.25 in terms of the incoming heal change. So it looks like you're getting a nerf by 25%. In reality, based off the math that I've done, this is a 16% nerf. So it's not that big of a deal in terms of a nerf itself, but the buff that you're gaining is more than the 16% the nerf that is incoming, which effectively makes this overall a net buff because it will improve your flexibility, require less gear slots, and just let you overall heal for more in the game. So in terms of how Ankh was working before compared to this incoming or this latest patch in terms of incoming heals, it looks like you're getting healed for 25% at a base value. If you actually do the math and you figure out the difference between these two, it comes out to be roughly 16% at a base value and does increase over time. But generally, you're not going to be in these super high end values where you're like worrying about, hey, I'm losing 20% H or 20% health here compared to that last patch. When I'm in a sacred, I have divine and I have Ankh on, and I have like these three other random conditionals. Like those are cases that you're generally being overhealed, and that's the thing that's getting nerfed effectively. So you're not going to be able to get healed, for example, from 0% HP to 100% HP, which was happening to some people, but that was not like the main reason why Ankh was good. Ankh was good because it actually made AoE heals impactful, and it felt like you didn't need as much single target healing due to clap heals being very, very effective from the life staff, and that aspect is going to be remaining relatively the same, while pots are effectively getting buffed. So overall, Ankh is going to be a very positive change. It seems like Ankh actually got stronger from this patch. It didn't get weaker, and that's something I wanted to get out of the way as a sort of misconception. In terms of how Ankh actually relates to the other artifacts in terms of jewelry right now, I think the Blood Drinker is generally not very good compared to Ankh. But there are other options here that are like quite interesting. I think that weirdly, Endless Thirst is a very competitive earring jewelry piece, specifically because you could pop up Focus Potion. Focus Potions have no cooldown, and this will proc the Empowering Toast and Fortifying Toast. So if you're a 1v1 player, a 3v3 player, like any small scale environment that allows you to use pots in your situation that you're fighting. So I know 1v1 tourneys sometimes they don't let you use pots. You could pop focus potions which have no pot animation and will just proc these bonuses, giving you 10% in power, giving you 20% fortify, and it will make your health pots last longer, which is really nice. So there's a lot of benefits that kind of come with this endless thirst. Or and well, sorry, they won't make them last longer. They'll make them stronger. So there's a lot of benefits that actually come from this from like a more solo standpoint now. Then I think that this actually outweighs Ankh for solo gameplay. So if you're like in a 1v1 thing, you probably want Endless Thirst, you don't want Ankh. If you're in PvE specifically and you don't care about times, if you don't care about speedruns, but you can compare about completions, Blood Drinker is there for you. And then otherwise, I just think Ankh is best. Even from a tank perspective, I think Ankh is better than Last Stopwatch, which will taunt. And you can get this week, I believe. This taunts, which is nice, but it still feels like overall it's less effective than Ankh because Ankh will just allow you to get healed for more. It requires less heals from your healer, and you just overall are able to stay alive much longer. So Ankh still seems like it's the king. Actually, seems like it got a little bit better because it's going to be more diversely usable since the actual under the hood rework never got changed where it was being multiplicatively applied to all incoming heals while being additively decreased by outgoing heals. So also, if you are a healer, like I just kind of alluded to there, and you're using Ankh, this thing for outgoing heals me 25% weaker. This is actually pushing it to the spot where this is viable for healers now. It kind of was viable for healers before because this 25%, this is a multiplicative bonus, and this outgoing heals where they're weaker is an additive bonus. So overall, you're just going to get more value out of Ankh if you're using it, even if you're healing, because this multiplicative bonus will outweigh an additive bonus. The reason why that works that way is because of how the buckets are structured in terms of what is applying to what, and is, in my opinion, requires a restructuring of how Ankh actually works fundamentally in order for Ankh to be effectively nerfed. If they nerf this to be 10% stronger, but consumes were 10% weaker, I would still run Ankh. If it was 5%, I would still probably run Ankh. It just fundamentally right now, because one thing that you're benefiting from is multiplicative and the thing that's taken away from you is additive, you effectively get more value out of Ankh than you should be able to. So that's just kind of a noteworthy thing there. Uh, Moving out of the Ankh zone, so to speak, because that's just a funny thing that keeps happening. We have some major nerfs. In terms of the Sundering Javelin change, this actually just removed the CDR completely. So the CDR is gone now. You're not going to be able to spam your scorpion stings and just pull people onto you endlessly, which is probably a good thing because that was kind of toxic. They have a issue where they fixed a bunch of damage that was being taken. Well, not really a bunch, but you could damage people that were repairing gates, which in my opinion was actually really nice because you didn't have to deal with any cheeses. But that's gone now, so now you have the infinite repairs back in OPR again. Which is not great, but I guess it's intended for it to be infinite OPRs right now. There were some other kind of patch specific changes that I don't want to go into specific, but just know if you had bugs and then the previous patch, they're generally fixed. There are still some bugs right now. So like if you're trying to roll rings, for example, it actually requires earring bonuses for some reason. So you need earring timeless shards to roll rings. You need ring timeless shards to roll earrings. I don't know how that happened, but I think they just messed up on the QA or whatever this time. It happens, but not that big of a deal. The other thing here that I wanted to talk about a lot in terms of a PvP perspective is something I've asked for a while, and I'm happy that they kind of finally listened to it because it felt very inconsistent. But they fixed the ultimate from SNS so that it's no longer removed by Nullify and Oblivion. For those of you who don't know what this means, because I thought I talked about this a lot, but I guess some of the EU SNSs never knew because they just weren't playing around this, and I was looking at their VODs. In terms of like war gameplay and OPR gameplay, there was a bug before if you used defensive formation and someone dropped an Oblivion on you, it would no longer get value. So the way to counter this before, so you would hold shield, so you'd be right there with your shield, and then you'd have to drop your shield, and then you'd have to put it back up. And in between this downtime was about 1 second. So there was a vulnerability to which you could exploit if you were attacking by just trying to bug, quote unquote, the other team's SNS, and that bug mechanic is now being fixed. So effectively, the best way to play SNS now is literally to tape down your right click and just defensive formation as long as possible. I still think it feels funny from a New World perspective because the optimal way to play this now to mitigate the most damage would actually be to prevent yourself from taking stam damage. So if you're a shield guy, but you don't actually want to shield things, you want to take damage to your HP bar, and therefore you would keep your aura up for longer, which would reduce more damage for your allies. So it's a very weird game where you actually want to shield to not take damage, which effectively makes some things that were not very good before very good from an SNS perspective. I have to come back to this because we have a lot of SNS people that tend to watch this stuff. But the wall is now actually a very good artifact for SNS because of this reason, because it'll allow you to keep your stamina up for longer, you'll be able to shield for longer. But overall, the skill ceiling for SNS got lessened a lot. But it was just kind of a confusing mechanic before, so I think this is overall a net positive change. And I am very happy that they did it because it felt inconsistent with how other things were treated in the game. But just be aware that SNS has gone from what I would consider to be like a B to A tier class, maybe a little bit higher than this. Like I think it's like probably an A tier class before. This has moved on to being like an S to S plus tier class in my opinion, because the value that you get from actually shielding people effectively will increase their HP by about 45%, which is way better than Ankh. It's way better than anything else that's in the game right now because it gives old fortify. And that's a multiplicative bonus that will affect everything in terms of damage reduction that cannot be removed. So it's just very, very, very strong right now. And I would highly encourage playing it if you're looking to win games without necessarily having to stress out too much from both of an OPR and a war perspective. It is a must have. and is super, super strong to play around. So if you see someone that is holding up a shield, you see an aura spinning around them, I would definitely recommend playing around them because they will keep you alive no matter what now, and you never have to worry about that going down until their stamina breaks. They adjusted some of the influence race stuff, so you don't just push missions to win it now. It seems like you actually have to focus on capture points a bit more, which seems really good because the way that these works before, the PvP was the fun part of it, but if you actually wanted to push the territory, you didn't want to do the PvP, you wanted to just run around and push missions. So now you're going to be able to have more influence gain from controlling those watchtowers. And overall, they might push this into a spot where you don't necessarily have to push missions. You can focus on the PvP to actually get to declare on a territory, which I think is the more fun thing from an open world perspective that people have enjoyed from this so far. So they fixed some bugs with this as well. I think the flail had some very big nerfs. The flail itself from this vortex ability made the flail basically a very, very good weapon. It was to the point where I think if people would have progressed in NA, because NA felt very slow compared to how EU developed the meta, I think basically every IGVG before would have transitioned to being a VG flail because flail just hard countered IG before versus now a flail gets countered by ice gauntlet, which makes IGVG good. It makes VG flail kind of a interesting thing, but a lot weaker. And then IG flail, I think, is gaining more popularity. So this is going to be something that pushes how the game works because you're not going to be able to cleanse and walk through all those ice showers for free anymore. It does kind of limit the slow effect from them, but you're still not going to be able to sprint through them for free and pretend like they don't exist and run at Mach 10 around using that vortex. So overall, Flail's power level went down a lot with this patch, and I think it's a very, very good thing. There are also some other issues that were happening to Flail in terms of abilities bugging that got fixed, but the main one here to focus on is the Vortex. There are also some artifact changes. Magnetic Gloves went from being an S tier artifact to probably being an SS tier, if we could even call that. It is quite simply just the best artifact in the game if you have a Void Gauntlet. It's a must-have. It no longer reduces your damage, which was bugged before, but it just overall just allows you to basically pump out infinite cooldowns, not really have much of a downside for it, and just transforms the way the class operates to behave at abnormal power levels, in my opinion. So if you don't have the mag gauntlets like me, you're crying right now, but mag gauntlets look very, very good. There are also some other issues like the tuned leather pants actually give their stat bonuses now. I've seen Magnify overall like get a little bit better with this patch with that change, but it seems like it's still not something you want to run if you can have it. Seems like Magnify is an avoid perk, but they're looking to reword that with time. There was this change I think is very interesting for light players for the Unyielding Helm artifact, which is an artifact that reduces crit damage that will now functionally be able to be used with light. Do I think this is good? Yes. Do I think it's better than Featherweight? That is like the $1,000,000 question, and it comes down to what you're taking damage from as a life staff. The way that crit damage works in this game is if you have damage that's incoming and you get critted, you get multiplied by that crit damage multiplier. So the versus from an armor standpoint, armor is going to affect this damage less than a crit damage multiplier reduction would. So if you are taking crits, which is the damage that you want to ward versus unyielding, a helm is going to get more value. If you are worried about consistent damage incoming, then unyielding helm is going to have less value. So it just depends how you want to ward specifically. I typically tend to prefer to ward towards burst if I'm a light player, and so therefore I would think Unyielding Helm is now very good from a light player perspective. This has gone from like being a B tier artifact where it was a niche tech slot from a light player perspective, in my opinion, to be an A two S tier artifact, depending on your kind of standpoint. I believe it's more into A side, and I think there are some better options than Featherweight and this for most classes, but Unyielding is right up there and is a very, very good artifact, and I would recommend running it if you're afraid about getting nuked. So if you're worried about getting blown up from muskets out of nowhere, this is a good way to prevent that. If you're worried about getting blown up from a fire staff or anything that really has int. So the abyss, if you are worried about the abyss, this is very, very good for you. Anything that has int will have a high crit damage multiplier, and this will just effectively just counter them. So it's a very good artifact to run for a large majority of classes now. In terms of other issues that were fixed, most of them were bug fixes. They're not specific to kind of PvP, PvE gameplay. I think the artifacts is the main change that kind of came through with this patch, or some flow changes that were very big from a PvP perspective. There's this hard helm that got changed with that artifact, and that's going to be good from a PvP perspective. There's not too much here from a PvE thing other than just unbugging some of the story quests so that you can actually, level up your character to 60 now. uh, uh, Kind of sad that that one didn't get figured out the first time, but what could you do? And overall, it just seems like the game is heading towards the right direction, but still has some minor faults. There's also this noteworthy change where if you're worried about dark matter before, and how I made that video about how to farm dark matter, and I was basically like, run a raid or you don't get dark matter. Now you can do wars and invasions. So invasions are actually a pretty good source of dark matter. If you win them, you get 75 dark matter. So I think it's definitely worth it to sign up for invasions if you could help it. If you're worried about dark matter, it only takes 25 minutes, and rewards you with a lot. And you also get a crate after and some gold. So it's like it's definitely worth doing. Wars give 100 dark matter. Great for war loggers like myself. Just kidding. I don't really war log that much anymore because New World decided that was not a thing and wanted you to grind your parts out for an artifact that just doesn't drop. I'm still upset about magnetic gloves. But yeah, you can do that now to get shards or to get dark matter too. So it's going to be easier to upgrade your gear. But acquiring that gear to upgrade is going to be the hard part. So if you're trying to grind a dungeon for an artifact, just know that you have a 10% chance, and there is a 2.5% chance that you'll end up like me after 35 runs and not end up with your artifact that you've loved since you've seen at first sight. So with that being said, I'll let you guys go now and enjoy the rest of your day. And overall, this seems like a very promising update. Also, don't sleep on the event itself. The event gives food that can boost your yield when actually crafting stuff, so it's very, very good. I think it boosts by 20%, so it's kind of nuts. And there's a bunch of other decent rewards from the event itself that I'll make about in a different video. But I'll see you guys later, and take care.